قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا حني قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. It's a Saturday morning. Assalamu alaikum to you. Welcome to the program. And I think today is all about life coaching, validation, believing in yourself, and trying to be the best version of yourself. 3 issues, 3 separate interviews. We're going to be looking at the issue around bullying, cyberbullying in particular. We also will talk about coaching, but a different type of coaching. I've heard of all types of coaching, but I haven't heard of laughter coaching. So that's something we'll cover on the show this morning. And we'll also look at the issue of validating yourself. So what's that all about? How important is it? Is it the same as believing in yourself, having high self-esteem? Well, let's uncover all of that with life coach Khadija Mia to talk about validation, particularly validating yourself. Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah for having me.
Lovely to have you here because we're going to talk. You're a life coach by profession. You've obviously studied psychology. You've just told me off air that you, what remains to be done is to do your master's. So inshallah, let's hope and pray that you follow that dream and complete that.
Ameen.
You are a life coach. You also do NLP. But we're going to talk about coaching from a slightly different angle. And this is all about validation, the importance of validation or the unimportance, how much of self-esteem and self-belief that you have in yourself, that it's not necessary for you to be depending on other people validating you. We're going to ask what exactly is validating, how important it is in your life, and how it fulfills you as a person.
Sure.
But before we get there, I watched you on iTrend last year, and my heart went out to you when you were having a discussion with Zahira Bam Ismail about the losses in your life.
Sure.
Would you like to summarize that and tell us how far you've come along from that discussion to the discussion today?
All right, as I discussed previously with Zahira, I belong to a group called Jannah's Little Keepers, where we provide counseling to individuals who've gone through loss, and that's the reason I got involved in that initiative. I personally have been through loss myself. Of the 5 pregnancies that I've had, only 2 were successful. So the first baby was a stillborn baby, and that was extremely traumatic for me to deal with. Just on the topic of validation, in association with that experience, I felt as a woman that I was not capable, I was not good enough, I was not worthy enough to be able to conceive or later even to be able to successfully have a pregnancy.
So at that point you felt like a failure as a woman?
I felt like a failure as a woman. And that experience in itself was a huge aspect of my own growth and my own development, because I needed to look within myself and start to trust me within and my creator in terms of the situational experiences that I was going through.
And lots of women go through all forms of challenges, whether it's a loss of a baby, whether it's a breakdown of a marriage, a relationship, not being accepted by family members, by in-laws, by outlaws, or the inner circle in your family.
Sure.
All of that is about validation. But just before we move into validation again, Jannah's Little Keepers, is that still an ongoing support group? And how does one hook in if you believe that you just need to be part of that group?
Okay, so it is a support group. It exists, and online you can find all the relevant information, which I will share with you later. There's an Instagram page, a Facebook page, and there are women that have provided voluntary support and involvement in that process. So we assist the woman who's going through bereavement or loss, either if they've had a stillborn baby or if they've had a miscarriage, during their pregnancy or a loss of a child. So we try to provide them with whatever support they need, even assisting them with the burial process, with the arrangements pertaining to that.
Mm-hmm. Do you find lots of people come for that type of support?
Yes, most definitely. There's definitely a need, and that's conducted nationally and even across the borders of South Africa. We have a lot of online, telephonic type of assistance that we do provide to individuals, etc.
MashaAllah, and maybe an ongoing service, because there's a great need
Most
out there.
definitely there is.
When you find yourself in a situation like that, sadly, people are very well-meaning, but they don't say the right type of... They don't give you the right type
Sure.
of support. And in their innocence and in their well-meaningness, they tend to say all the wrong things and hurt you further in the process.
For sure. For sure. It's a very emotional process. And at that time, the kind of validation that a person needs is to say, it's okay not to be okay. You know, we need, people around us that provide us with support, encouragement, or just being there, to provide a person with the love that they require in that time of despair, in that time of sadness.
What I find is very disturbing, and I know again people are very well-meaning, is when you've just had a loss and people come to commiserate with you, they say things like, don't cry, you're going to upset Allah by crying, Allah
Yes.
doesn't like you
Yes.
to be crying. Stuff like, I know they're well-meaning,
Sure.
but in that moment you are so broken
100%.
that all you want to do is cry and just not stop crying.
Sure. It's a very difficult and traumatic period for people to go through, and some people deal with grief differently.
Obviously.
They need time out, they need to be away from people, and sometimes people feel offended
Yes.
if you're not able to engage with them. So I think people need to be mindful of situations and experiences. And when it comes to validation, I think in general, Julie, every single person, one of the common denominators in general for everyone out there is that they do seek validation in some way or the other. People want to be seen, they want to be heard, and when they express their feelings, they want someone really to attentively listen to what they're saying, not just hear what they're saying, but listen to them.
And when we talk validation, I'm going to ask you to unpack it a little more. What we fail to realize is that as much validation as I need and want, so do you. And in communication, and this is where the art of communication fails, I want to be heard, I want to be validated, but I forget about you. We're in a group of people, or we're having a conversation as friends, but it's all about me, me, me. So let's understand then what exactly is validation.
So validation is actually the process whereby you would like to have someone else provide you with acknowledgement, accolades, and make you feel important or validate or acknowledge certain experiences that you've been through in some way or the other. Self-validation, though, is the actual reality of what it is you should be providing yourself with. And that comes to self-love. So it's about how do you fill your own cup with love where you can feel confident within yourself and not go to the extreme of wanting that from someone else. So in most scenarios and situations, I have a lot of people coming to see me on an ongoing basis from the corporate sector and privately. And within our community in particular, 90% of the problems that exist or the challenges stem from an insecurity that people have. An insecurity about themselves in terms of not being good enough, not being beautiful enough, not being thin enough, etc., 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 not being smart enough, not being successful enough. So our thoughts in terms of what we're thinking and what we're feeding ourselves become our beliefs, which in essence become the reality of our existence. And if we have negative self-esteem, sometimes individuals who act nasty or are extremely judgmental or extremely angry or create a sense of anxiety for you are individuals who have their own lot that they're dealing with. So it's their own insecurity that's being reflected.
They don't feel good enough at all. So there's no personal validation,
Yes.
or they're not getting validation from other people. What's more important, that you work on your own self-validation? Because you can't always be dependent on other people to say
100%.
or interact with you to make you feel good. Having said that, that's question number one.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, I should imagine, are stuck in loveless, relationships simply because they believe they're not good enough. I can't get out of this relationship because I'm not worthy of being loved by anybody else. So I might as well just stay with second or third best.
Yes.
Because no one else is going to take me. No one else is going to love me.
Sure. I think generally as women and the population at large, everyone has an insecurity or a hang-up about themselves. And by having those hang-ups and insecurities, you somehow manifest that in terms of how you present yourself to the world because of your perception of others. Through my journey of life, answering your question that you've just asked about validation, I have gone through a journey where in the corporate context, I've been extremely bold, professional, and I feel confident in that regard. But throughout my journey, there were instances, as I spoke about the loss that I had with children. Furthermore, I also went through some life challenges at the juncture where my father passed away, which was a huge life-changing event.
So sorry. I
had gone through a separation in terms of my marriage. And I can be confident enough to talk about it today because, that period of my life has passed. But at the time, I was also going through huge difficulty in terms of the aspects that we just spoke about earlier. And my husband and I needed some time to actually deal with our own internal issues. And alhamdulillah, through the mercy and the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we found our way back to each other. But in that time, there's a need for you to work through your own internal stuff, as we call it. And most people out there are, as you just said, living in relationships or having situations where they have challenges on an ongoing basis, but they are not going for assistance or confronting the reality of the problems that they're encountering. And in the process, they're actually neglecting themselves.
Absolutely. We're going for an ad break now, but when we come back, I want to ask the question, let's explore it further. You often hear people saying, learn to love yourself first, and then you go out into the world. So let's talk about that concept in terms of validation. What's that going to do to you as a person, and how's it going to change you as a person to make you more amenable to other people?
Sure.
Right after the ad break. I'm talking to Khadija Mia. She's a life coach. She's also an NLP practitioner, and she's here to talk about validating yourself. Welcome back. We're going to be talking cyberbullying a little later on in the show, and also laughter therapy. Right now, we're talking validating yourself with life coach Khadija Mia, and we're also going to ask the question, what is #unfilteredme all about? How does it tie in with validating oneself?
Okay, thanks, Julie. Regarding my life journey, as I've just described to you very briefly, during the time that I was going through this particular stage in my life where things were very uneasy and there was a dark cloud hanging over me, I actually dug deep down within myself to work through those issues, and I identified that there's a huge need because lots of women approached me during that time and even after to ask me how I was coping and then how did I manage to overcome this particular challenge in my life. So, then the initiative called #unfilteredme was born. So it's a process that is conducted by myself and my business partner, Chris Kennedy. And the process is really about women going on a journey of inner transformation and change, so that they can enable themselves to cope with the life challenges that they may be facing. And everybody has a story, everybody has a journey. And through this process, women can start looking at aspects of their lives in terms of areas that they find challenging. And they can start working on goals and objectives and setting those for themselves, working on the emotional blockages that they perhaps may have based on certain experiences from the past.
And it's not easy to do it on your own. And it's okay to go to a life coach like yourself.
100%.
Because you kind of tap in. I mean, I wouldn't know how to do it on my own.
Yes.
You'd ask the right questions and make me find the answers within myself.
100%.
So, Unfiltered Me is really about validating yourself.
It's about being confident about who you are. it's also not seeking that validation from other people and finding that comfort within yourself. As I said earlier, we do need validation, but the moment it becomes an extreme situation where you become dependent on that need from other people telling you that you're looking good or that things are going well in your life, or that reinforcement of certain aspects, and especially today with social media, we have a huge number of individuals out there who are in major need for getting the relevant assistance, because it's become an obsession in terms of having that validation from other people. If I put up a picture, this is what I need to get in terms of the likes or the following.
Isn't that being narcissistic?
To a huge extent it is. I think there's a difference in terms of being ego-driven. And there's a difference in terms of really seeking approval from people because, you have a neediness which is based on your own insecurities. So one needs to draw reference to what is really creating this within yourself. Where does this stem from? It's not about just putting the Band-Aid on and saying, okay, this is the problem we have. Let's try to just soothe the pain. But it's to try and identify, where does this blockage, where does this barrier actually come from? What negative anchor in your life has created the sense of conflict within yourself? So the moment your intention is not sound and it becomes an obsession and a need that you want in terms of having something fulfilled on a regular basis, then you need to identify that, hey, I've got a problem. I need to revisit this issue in my life and relook at myself in terms of how I'm reacting and relating to situations and people out there.
So Khadija, it's really about validating yourself and seeking validation from other people, but in small doses, because you can't expect other people to fix you. If you're broken inside, whatever the breakage is, other people can't do it for you. You need to do it for yourself. That also then leads me to two further questions, and that is the two current buzzwords that we hear all the time, and that is be mindful, live in the present, and love yourself. Because how do you expect other people to love you if you don't love yourself? So what is it that I'm giving off that makes you say to me, learn to love yourself?
Well, I think it starts off, as you said, mindfulness is about your thoughts. It's about what you're feeding your mind with. So if you go into a situation and you already have a negative view about someone or the reaction that you're going to get from certain situations, you're already creating a sense of negative energy within yourself. So mindfulness is really being aware of the other person and about your own thoughts in terms of what you're feeding yourself. The other thing is really finding time for yourself. So you need to find, people call it self-love, finding that time out in order to do things that you enjoy doing. Find that time to do it, whether it's prayer, whether it's meditation, whether it's exercise, whatever it is, or baking or cooking, or whatever it is that creates an outlet for you so that you can actually find time to focus inwardly in terms of what makes you really happy within. The other aspect really is about not surrounding yourself with negative individuals. If you're in situations and you're constantly seeking this validation and approval from people all the time, try to identify why is that the particular need from within yourself and then from the external influences around you. So as much as you need to be aware of yourself, be aware of the individuals you surround yourself with, because if they're making comments that are negative, or they're judging you, or they're making you feel like an outcast, and you feel disadvantaged because of certain situations, perhaps maybe it's not a good thing to spend time with them.
That, and also your self-image and self-esteem issues need to be addressed.
100%.
That being said, you also spoke about the type of thoughts that you entertain. If you're entertaining very negative, dramatic, hurtful thoughts, if you don't change your thought pattern, you're going to act out on all that negativity. There is a chance that you could act out and say and do all of the wrong things. How do you switch off that light? How do you switch that off?
Well, the whole thing is really about taking a step back. Before you open your mouth or say something, or before you react to situations, you rather take a step back. And even for a few seconds, we teach people how to be mindful is to just actually pause. Pause for a moment and think about what it is that you're thinking and what it is that you're about to say. And before you say that, think about whether this particular thought is actually going to enable me or rather disable me in terms of functioning,
Wow.
whether it's with individuals in a corporate context, or whether it's with customers, or whether it's with your siblings, or whether it's with your spouse. And by being mindful and knowing how to manage your temperament, how to, you know what are the issues or the actual red lights that create those type of triggers for you. So if there's going to be a trigger, we've had a client that said, I have to get home at a certain time after work, and every time I get home, I have my kids all jumping on top of me because they needed attention. So what did I need to do? I needed to first unwind before I got home so that when I see my kids, I'm in a better space to actually spend quality time with them. And what this person did is took the long route home instead of the shorter route, because being in traffic meant being stressed out, dealing with a lot of tension, but taking a longer route home meant maybe listening to music or just finding time and quiet time to actually unwind. So identify what it is that are your triggers which create the sense of negativity within yourself, and those reactions that you don't want to have, and the thoughts that you don't want to think. Try to reprogram that. And believe you me, there are methods and there are ways in which we need to reprogram ourselves. I do believe that we need to learn, unlearn and relearn behavior. So even though we've been pre-programmed based on our childhood and our experiences that we've been brought up in, everybody has a blueprint. Everybody has situational experiences, how they've interacted with community, society, friends, family, and in their upbringing, each and every individual has their own story and life experiences and the way in which they perceive the world. You are not going to have every other person feeling the same way or perceiving the world in the same way you see it.
And if you have learned bad behaviors or not knowing how to deal with people in a positive way, you can unlearn that and relearn better behaviors and better interactions and better ways of validating yourself and others.
100%. I think the process that we take women on, and especially through the hashtag Unfiltered Me movement and a number of other self-development programs that we offer, is really about finding a space within yourself in terms of identifying what are those barriers, what are those challenges, what are the negative anchors that you're experiencing, confronting those, because I think one of the biggest fear we all have is confronting the reality of situations. We had a lady in one of our sessions recently, and just to share, one of the things that she experienced when we brought her forward and she was willing to be a volunteer in the group, and she said, looking at our cards in terms of the different aspects of her life, she said, finances is one of my major issues. I'm not financially stable. I don't know how to manage money. I'm currently sitting in a dire straits. I'm in the red and it's affecting me emotionally and my family. And when we explored further, symptomatically, yes, that was the problem that she was experiencing. But when we dug deeper and we started asking specific questions, so we provide an environment where we facilitate a process. We don't tell people what to do. We create an environment where individuals start identifying for themselves what it is that they need to be aware of. And in that process, she identified that one of the things that created huge turbulence within herself and the reason she was so unhappy is because she kept seeking validation. So what she would do is she would go out and she would buy gifts for her brother, gifts for her sister, gifts for her friends. And we asked her, so if you're having an issue with finances, why are you going out there and purchasing all these things to give everybody? And she broke down in the session and she said, one of the things I've always done is I felt unworthy of myself. So I felt that the need to be loved by having acceptance from others would be to flourish people with gifts, and I would get a sense of approval from them.
We've almost come to wrap-up time. 2 very quick questions. When we talk validation and acceptance, we're also talking issues around when you're having a really bad moment, your negative self-talk would probably place you in a volatile situation. Yes. Is it okay to time out?
Yes.
It's not a cop-out.
Most definitely. Sometimes you're really in a bad situation. You've had an encounter with someone that you love perhaps, and it's actually been draining emotionally for you because you're seeking out the validation from that individual and it's not forthcoming. And you may in those situations then react rather than respond to things and become angry or say the wrong things. So
Absolutely.
what you should rather then do in those scenarios is just step out from the situation, take a breather, take a walk, find that self-care time, and try to just refocus. I promise you, once you do that and come back into the situation, you'll see things differently.
Final words on validation from you this morning.
I think the final words are that every single person requires validation. Even Oprah said it in one of her addresses to Harvard graduates, is that that's the common denominator for everybody out there. And even in my practice, I find that that is one of the aspects that individuals thrive on and need. However, if it becomes extreme, if it becomes emotionally debilitating and it creates huge amounts of stress for you and uneasiness to the point of becoming depressed and even suicidal, and I've had cases of those coming to the fore, then you need to get professional help.
How do people get in touch with you?
My contact details, I'm on Instagram. I've got a website address which I'll provide to you soon. It's at Khadija_Enigma on Instagram. And my contact details, should I provide that now?
Yes, just give us one number.
It's 082-857-4446. And I do work here in South Africa and even internationally.
Well, there you go. Please continue validating other people and continue doing it yourself, because I can see that inner light shining through.
Thank you so much, Julie.
And there you have it, Khadija Mia talking to us about validating yourself. And of course, #UnfilteredMe. It's all about validation, self-love, self-care, and being in the moment. Don't go away. We're going to talk laughter therapy and cyberbullying. Welcome back. My next guest is Sue Jameson. She calls herself a joy activist and laughter coach. Now, even when I say it, there's a smile on my face, but I must admit, it's the first time ever I hear of a joy activist and a laughter coach. Is this something that we ought to be taking seriously enough? And how serious should your problems be before you engage with someone like Sue, who calls herself a joy activist and laughter coach? And how many sessions do you actually have to attend to possibly overcome the difficulties that you're experiencing at that point in life? Morning, welcome to the show.
Hello, Julie. Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be with you today.
Thank you indeed for being here, and you've got this broad smile on your face.
It's my job.
Is it because of the interview, or is it because of the type of work you're in?
You know what? I have to practice what I preach.
Okay.
If I'm a joy activist and a laughter coach, I have to live that kind of a lifestyle. And it doesn't mean I'm always happy and smiling and laughing, but I am intentional about laughing and being a joyful person.
Wonderful. I need people like you around me all of the time. The first time ever in all my years of this type of work that I come across, I mean, I've been through lots of different types of therapists and coaches, etc. But the first time I hear of a joy activist and laughter coach, and a colleague or a friend sent me your details the other day, and she said, in fact, she invited me to the function.
That's right.
She said you were going to be addressing a group of cancer survivors.
Correct.
And, you know, I'm free to attend the session as well. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it, but I thought that would be an interesting discussion. So how long is this modality in operation?
Look, well, since time began, laughter has been good medicine.
Okay.
I mean, I usually address an audience and my first question is, do you believe that laughter is good medicine? And everybody nods and says, yes, it is. And then my next question is, do you laugh enough for it to be good medicine? And, well, nobody laughs enough for it to be good medicine. But every time you laugh, you're taking some good medicine. And so it's been around forever, but it started as a kind of a therapy a few years ago. I heard about it 22 years ago when somebody in the United States literally laughed himself well. And I just knew that this was what I was made for. And so I started researching laughter, but I knew it was more than just laughter.
And prior to you going into the research and decided, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to become, what were you doing?
I was doing all sorts of strange things, you know, just different jobs, event management, but this was the one that changed my life, literally.
What sort of place or space were you in when you happened upon laughter therapy and decided this is going to change my life, and how did it change your life?
Well, it's quite strange, but it was at a friend's wedding on the 13th of June, 1997, and it was the day my marriage ended.
Oh, so sorry to hear that.
So it was not a good day. But I heard about laughter therapy, and it was
on
like...
the day your marriage
day,
ended?
On that very day. And
how did you happen upon it?
The man who actually married my friends told me about laughter therapy.
Were you crying at the time?
No. No, not yet. And in fact, you know, I shouldn't have got married. He was a good man, but... It
wasn't meant to be.
But it was like, you know, when your life is in a mess and the seed that is planted, and you go, when there's lots of manure, there's good soil for the seed. And so that seed grew into my destiny. I knew this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And so I've been pursuing that.
Did you ever wonder that you'd go out into the world, you become something called a joy activist and a laughter coach, that people will in fact take you seriously enough?
You know, I am dead serious about laughter. I speak to people because laughter, we think laughter and joy is just a frivolous thing. But actually, laughter is literally the antidote to stress. And stress is the #1 killer in the world. So when I address an audience, I'm telling them, you know, and I go through the dangers of stress, the you know, why it's so the #1 killer. Because if and I love jokes and comedy for those comedians out there, but there's not enough funny in the world. So I teach people to laugh intentionally, deliberately, strategically.
People around me are going to think I'm crazy. So here I find myself in a very stressful situation.
Right.
And I need to find something to laugh about. So I might read something funny or watch a comedy or whatever.
Which is all great.
And if I don't even go to that, what is it? How do I switch on to start laughing and relieving the stress?
Well, I teach people laughter exercises, and I don't do funny. I mean, I don't tell jokes because the audience won't take me home to keep them laughing. I need to give them tools to teach them to laugh when they're on their own, when they're with their families, when they're with groups of friends. It's easier to laugh with a group. But one of my favorites is I tell them to find a laughter trigger. And my laughter trigger is red cars. So when I'm driving and I see a red car, I laugh. Not all the time.
Yeah, but most of the time.
It's just conditioning. You know, children laugh between 300 and 500 times a day.
Ooh.
And adults laugh maybe 3 to 5 times a day.
If that.
If that. And then we wonder why we're getting stressed and anxious and depressed and life is on top of us. And when we laugh, we might not change our situation, but we will change ourselves because literally we're changing our chemistry. Stress chemistry is poison. So when we change our chemistry, we start thinking clear and go, well, I might be able to sort that problem out this way. We start thinking of ways to deal with our situations.
Let's assume we have a very bad situation.
Okay.
There's a person in our lives that's making life very untenable. We can go one of two ways. We could confront them, have a big blow up and kick them out of our lives. We could ignore them. They just don't exist at all. But both the situations are very stressful. How is laughter going to assist? Now, how do I bring laughter into that situation? Because I'm going to have to include that person, don't I? Or do I keep them out of the equation and just heal myself through my laughter therapy?
You know, it would depend on the situation. I think that love is the answer to every situation, and that one chooses to love, and one might not feel like loving, but one chooses to love, and that's more on the joy activist sort of side. So I would say lean towards love rather than away from love. And if you've got somebody that you can get together with, you know, if you laugh with somebody, you're breaking down barriers. You know, you might be anxious and angry, but if you sit down and intentionally laugh, you'll find that all those things that you're so angry about or so stressed about are not that bad. They're not as bad as you thought they were.
So, Sue, what about a situation where you're having confrontation, or you just don't have a good relationship with this person, and there may possibly be a blow-up, and you decide you're going to laugh? That person may think you're being sarcastic, and that is why you're laughing. And if anything, it will create a bigger problem.
I wouldn't just burst out laughing like if I'm having a problem with my boss. You know, I wouldn't have,
or your partner for that matter.
I would say to them, listen, I've heard about this thing called laughter being good medicine, being able to break down barriers, and let's just put our stuff aside for the moment and let's have a laugh together. And when you do that, you sometimes, you should be able to just see one another and go, hang on, I know this person. This is the person that I love. This is the person I've got a relationship with. And do it as an experiment. But even if you're not seeing that person, find ways to laugh. And, you know, I'm just going to talk about joy. You know, forgiveness is key. You know, love rules, love wins. Forgiveness is so important, and we need to forgive others, but we also need to forgive ourselves.
I spoke to a life coach just before you came onto the show about loving oneself and being mindful. It's easier said than done. Learn to love yourself before others can love you.
Absolutely.
So if you don't love yourself, you're not giving other people permission to love you.
Yeah.
And if you don't forgive yourself, you're not giving permission to anyone else to forgive you. Those are two concepts I want you to explain, because it's easier said than done. Oftentimes I want to love myself. I want to forgive myself. I don't know how.
Yeah.
So let's unpack that right after the ad break. I'm talking to joy activist Sue Jameson. She's a joy activist and she's a laughter therapist. When we get back from the ad break, we're going to ask her to give us a couple of tips in working this laughter therapy out. And how many sessions do you in fact have to go on before you see positive results in your life? Don't go away. We'll hear all about that after the ad break. Laughter therapy is what we're talking about, and I can't help smiling because we have the joy activist in studio, Sue Jameson. We're going to ask her to share some of those tricks with us so that we can start practicing and stop being anxious, stressed, angry, and bring a bit of joy back into our lives. Before you respond to that, the question before the ad break: forgiving oneself and loving oneself, easier said than done. What are the self messages that you give yourself to get to that point?
You know, we often have to make a choice. I went through a stage where I really didn't like myself at all. You know, I went through some amazing revelation about who I am. And often it's just a choice. You know, I choose to love myself, and I choose to forgive, because forgiveness is not always an emotion. You forgive to set yourself free. And somebody might have done something terrible to you, but you are the one who's responsible for how you respond. So forgiveness as a choice and love as an action is so important. You might not love somebody in a way of emotion, but you choose to love because each person is worthy of love. And so we decide to love. And we, as you said, we cannot love somebody else when we don't love ourselves.
How about when somebody has really hurt you so badly to the point where you even ask yourself, where am I going to find the capacity to forgive this person? So there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of resentment towards the person, to the point where you could actually end up hurting the person. How do you get to the point of forgiveness, letting go, without letting all of those negative feelings haunt you? You need to free yourself, because if you don't, it's going to be a disaster.
That's right. Somebody said unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. And so forgiveness is setting yourself free, like we've said. And you choose every day, I forgive you, and you speak it. You know, our words have power. So I speak it, I forgive X person. Don't feel like it. And tomorrow I'll say, I forgive them. And you do it on a day-to-day basis, and one day you will not have that pain attached to that memory. Because
do you have to say to the person personally, or just your own self-talk?
No, you can say to yourself, you know, some people will never meet that person that was...
Ever again.
They'll never meet them again. But that person is so big in their lives because they haven't forgiven them. And even if they're even long gone, still make that choice and go through all the people that you need to forgive, even for the simplest little things, to set yourself free. It is the most empowering
so it's
situation.
a process.
And it's a process, but it's also a decision.
So it's really about a positive self-talk.
Absolutely.
How do you start loving yourself? I mean, I don't stand in the shower and say, oh, I love you, Julie, you're great. Well, you must. How do you do that without feeling silly?
Well, what's wrong with silly? I mean, look in the mirror in the morning when the hair is all like this and go, you're beautiful, I love you, you know, you're amazing.
So it's really about self-affirmation.
It's self-affirmation is because of the power of our words. You know, we can speak, and you know what, as women, we often speak positively over other people, and then we look at ourselves and we go, you're useless, you're stupid, you know, and all these things, and we're actually speaking death over ourselves.
Right.
So choice is huge, and intention, and being deliberate about this.
And being mindful.
So
if I come to you for a session or a couple of sessions because I'm in a dark place, and I decide not to go to a regular life coach or a therapist or an NLP, or an NLP practitioner to start changing my thinking, etc., and I decide I'll come to you, how many sessions do I have to engage in with you before before I feel a change within me?
20 minutes.
Now, let's be serious.
I'm being serious. I'm dead serious about this. Caroline Leaf is a neuroscientist, and she says a really good belly laugh almost instantaneously reduces levels of stress hormones. And we're not going to do it on air, but we'll do it in the break, and we'll have a belly laugh, and you will notice the difference straight away. Now, I don't sit one-on-one with people generally, but I do groups. So if you've got a group like the Cancer Support Group, Survivors Group, I do corporates, churches, I do retirement homes, you name it, I go to different groups. Schools, I do under-resourced schools, and literally within the first, my other question is, before we laugh, is do you have any pain in your body? And we say we laugh it off. Literally, we laugh off the pain. And at the end of a session of maybe 15, 20 minutes, people are pain-free, and within 5 minutes, they're already feeling lighter, and they are starting to see the difference.
This is no magical voodoo type of thing that you're doing.
You know, we're created with this gift of laughter, and we're told as kids who are laughing all the time, don't laugh in the classroom, don't laugh at the table, don't laugh, at mosque or church or temple or whatever. Stop behaving like a child. And we condition the laughter out of the children. And we become us, who are anxious, depressed, stressed adults. And so we need to start taking our medicine again. And I just this last week, I got a call from somebody who'd been to a session of mine 6 years ago. And he's booked me for another session that he's organizing. 6 years later, he remembers that 1 hour I spent with him. I've had people, you know, years later, my life has never been the same. So 1 hour can change your life.
So you're saying literally just one session can do the trick. What about those people?
Look, ideally you want to continue it because your laughter, you need to take it daily. But, you know, you learn to do it on your own and with your own groups.
So you're in a group setting. What is it that triggers people to start laughing? Are they going to, so I'm heartbroken, let's assume I'm heartbroken, and I join your group. Are you going to allow me to vent my anger and my heartbreak? And then when do I get to a point of laughing to get rid of all the anxiety and the stress that I'm feeling?
Laughter and tears are very close. Often people will be laughing and it ends in tears, but healing tears, not anxious, holding back tears, but just freeing tears. With laughter therapy, and it's not therapy, it's just laughter coaching.
The difference being?
Therapy is, you know, you've got to be a therapist registered and all the rest of it. I'm a laughter coach. But, you know, I don't sit with you and hear about all your anxieties. We start laughing, and we start laughing at those issues. And I saw...
So I don't sit in a group and retell my story
no,
and
you
say,
don't have to tell
the
me
reason
anything.
I'm here is because I had a breakup with my spouse, or I've lost all my finances, or I've been fired from my job.
There's
you don't have to retell the story.
No, there's times that we'll do that. And actually, I mean, honestly, you say, you know, I don't have any finances. And we just laugh at that. We literally laugh at the fact that my pockets are empty.
Oh, I'd cry if I've got to share that information.
but that's okay as well. But you know what, we laugh at it, and suddenly the power of that trauma has been broken. And suddenly you go, okay, so I've got no money.
What am I going to do about it?
Well, why don't I do X, Y, Z? There are times when we literally, in smaller groups, we'll talk about the pain and the issues, and then we will laugh together over those things. And I've seen relationships restored. I've seen people healed miraculously.
Talk about the cancer group that you addressed last week, the cancer survivors.
There was maybe 20. And I always ask about the pain, and everybody had pain in some area. And Sadia had, her finger she couldn't bend her finger, and it was in pain. And we laughed for 15, 20 minutes. And the room was almost pain-free. The one man who didn't laugh so much didn't get the result. But Sadia's finger was bending and pain-free. And even on Monday, I checked with her. And she was, no, it's fine. And so it carries miracle working power, dunamis power in laughter, and just incredible testimonies of what people have come through.
Right, but you are not saying necessarily that you're a cancer survivor, and by going on laughter therapy, that the cancer is not going to start up again. Let's assume, or you've broken a leg or a limb, and in the laughter therapy session, you feel pain-free for that time, for that half an hour, for that hour. But after the session is over, the pain manifests again.
Not always.
So what happens when the pain manifests again?
You laugh it off. You laugh it off.
On your own?
On your own. And laugh at it. We don't laugh at people. We laugh with people. But we can laugh at the pain. And when we laugh, we release endorphins and dopamine, and they're all natural painkillers. But in addition to natural painkillers, and I've seen it often, that you know, and I used to think, okay, is this just for now or is this for the future? And I've seen people a week later and I've said, how's the pain? And the pain has been either completely gone or improved. And let me just tell you that there are testimonies of people who have become cancer-free, which is...
With laughter therapy.
With laughter.
Okay, almost time to wrap up.
Oh,
Final words from you.
Just one thing I wanted to say with Foundations for Joy, because, you know, I can't give you joy, but I can help you to build strong foundations. One of the most powerful things is thanksgiving, because our brain cannot contain fear and gratitude at the same time. So when you start feeling fearful about your situation, you know, or anxious or even angry, start thinking about what you're thankful for. We have a million things to be thankful for. And the fear, scientifically proven, has to leave the brain.
Because you're in a situation of gratitude.
In the situation of gratitude, and it's scientific, it's chemical. So the fear leaves the brain. And no matter what you're facing, I'm grateful for the weather, I'm grateful for my home, I'm grateful for my job. Just express your gratitude and the anxiety will go. And so when you are dealing with whatever you're dealing with, you're able to deal with it without that anger, without that stress and fear.
Just very quickly, you often find when you walk in a mall or at a function, everyone looks very grim and very serious about their business, and all you need to do is smile. And you'll find that people smile, they respond to you immediately.
It's
What's
contagious.
that about?
Short story, there's a mirror neuron in my brain. So if I frown at you, you'll frown back. If I smile at you, your brain says smile back.
Okay.
And even smiling is good for you.
Oh, good on you then.
Yeah.
Thank you for your smiles. Thank you for sharing with us.
Please, can I share my, just if anybody needs to get hold of me.
Of course, very quickly.
Yes, info@joy-activist.com.
There you go. And if the people haven't managed to get that, they'll contact us and we'll pass on the information.
Julie, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for making me smile and laugh.
It's my pleasure.
That was Joy, not Joy, Sue Jameson. She's a joy activist and a laughter therapist. And if you're in a dark place, really, I suggest give it a shot, and who knows, your life might just turn totally around. My next guest is a social media influencer. She's a young lady, she's still at university, and she's here to talk about social media, how you become an influencer. And in the second part of the interview, we'll be talking cyberbullying. And of course, she's going to talk about her experience being bullied, obviously, on the net. So all of that, stay with us. I think this is going to be very interesting indeed. Assalamu alaikum, Raisa. Welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum assalam.
I've been told that you have a huge following. You are a social media influencer. How did that all start for you? And how do you feel in the space of social media scrutiny, perhaps?
So I started doing, well, what I would be called an influencer. Probably about 2 years ago. Before then, I didn't even know that the term existed. Okay. I was just kind of posting poetry, doing my own thing. I didn't really take much notice to how my following grew.
And this was on Facebook?
This was on Instagram.
Instagram,
yeah.
Okay.
So after my divorce, I gained a lot more following because people related to my story.
You shared your story on Instagram.
I did share my story on Instagram.
Did you feel okay about putting your life out there? Didn't you at any point feel vulnerable and perhaps think, why should I be sharing such personal details about my life?
So I did feel very vulnerable when I did it. But the only reason that I did put it forward was because I felt that a lot of people could learn from my story and from what I had been through. And after I had posted my journey and all the obstacles that I had to overcome as a young woman, a lot of women resonated with what I had to say. And I think it gained momentum, and a lot of people were motivated and inspired by what I had said, and they started coming forward and sharing their stories, which made it a lot easier for me, so I didn't feel as vulnerable as I initially did.
And And you didn't feel all alone, knowing that there were many other young women sharing a similar journey and a similar story to yours. It must have been very therapeutic, talking about it, or, you know, doing all of those posts. But now, how about your ex-partner? Did he not object to the fact that you were talking about your journey?
So I don't ever badmouth anyone on my social media. So no matter what journey I have been through, no matter what I had overcome, I try not to make it about the other person.
So it's your journey, your
myself.
responsibility.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people resonated with that. So obviously every obstacle that you overcome, you can either take it as a lesson or you can ignore it. So I take every single obstacle that I come forward with as a lesson, and I try to learn from it. And that's what I shared. I didn't ever badmouth my ex-partner. I didn't ever say anything bad about him. I didn't bring up his name or anything like that. It was more about focusing on myself and what I needed to learn in order to move forward.
When did you realize that you have such a large following and that what you're having to share on Instagram is making a huge impact in other young lives, or possibly even older lives?
So I think it was when businesses started contacting me to actually come through and review their products, or they wanted to send me things in order to promote it on social media. And that became a very big thing. So a lot of different companies invited me to either review their business or review their brand. And that kind of uplifted me as well, because I got to uplift really small businesses that needed that upliftment. And I got to interact with so many amazing people through this journey. So it's just been wonderful.
So what's your following like at the moment?
I've got about 46,000 followers
okay.
on Instagram.
Does it increase kind of on a daily basis?
So obviously you need to stay up to date all the time. It's a full-time job. So you need to constantly be updating. The second people lose interest, you lose following. You know, when your posts gain momentum, you gain following, and it's just like up and down. So
what does it do for you, apart from the fact that you've got such a large following? You personally, Raisa, what has it done for you? And then where do you find the energy? Because I know you're studying currently, you're studying psychology.
Psychology, yes.
Second year. All the best.
Thank you.
What has it done for you as a person?
I think that before I started with social media, I was quite a quiet person. I didn't really have the ability to go out and just speak to people or anything like that. But what my social media platform has done for me is it's given me a lot of confidence, and it's allowed me to be my true self. And with the amazing people that I have in my life and that follow me through this journey, they've really uplifted me and helped me get through some of the most difficult times in my life. So it really has been incredible to have the following and to have these people.
To have such a large following and to make comments and to influence other people, you have to be true to yourself, and whatever you're sharing has to be valid, it's got to be relevant, and it's got to be of substance. Yes. How do you tap into yourself and talk to us about things that you've posted that has really made an impact in other people's lives? So valid, relevant.
Valid and relevant, yes.
Yes, absolutely. And to be truthful about everything as well.
So obviously the second that you pretend to be someone that you're not on social media, people immediately pick it up. And it's sometimes it is difficult to just be true to yourself and to stay with your values and to stick within your limits. And I think how I've managed to do that is I've just kind of... I've looked around, and I have a lot of other social media influencers who are very close to me. They're very good friends. And when we speak about it, you know, we say that we just share the truth. So whether people approve of it or whether they don't, we're going to tell the truth. We're going to, you know, we're going to express how we feel.
But you're not going to be vindictive, you're not going to be unkind, you're not going to be harsh.
Absolutely not.
You do everything you do with the greatest of respect for the people that are following you.
So we try our best to never ever insult anyone else or to bring anyone down. And I think that has made a massive difference, because even like in the second part of the interview, we'll be speaking about cyberbullying. So even with the cyberbullies, we never ever, you know, put out their real names or put out who they really are. But we do post what they've said in order to raise awareness that this does happen to everyone. So if other people are being bullied, you know, it's not just them, everyone kind of experiences it, and then we try and give them tips on how to deal with that. So yeah, being true to yourself, I think that's a personal choice. So
there are also young people out there. Alhamdulillah, you seem to have a very level head on your shoulders and a very strong support system. But there are people out there that love the sensation, love the popularity, love being out in the space where they can boast X amount of followers. So it's all about their ego.
of course.
How do you make sure that you don't cross over? Because obviously narcissism, ego is a huge thing.
Yeah.
And then there's also people vying for that space and for that following. How do you keep level-headed in a space like that?
I think that's a very difficult question to answer. I think that everyone would deal with it differently. But for me personally, I've never wanted to be in the spotlight. It kind of happened, and now that I'm there, I don't want to abuse that opportunity. I want to try my best to uplift the people that are around me. I don't want to use it for my own self-gain. But obviously I can't speak for everyone because everyone is different.
With the fourth industrial revolution, with technology really speeding, you know, it's growing by leaps and bounds. Where do you see yourself? Do you think you'll still be relevant in the next couple of months or the next couple of years? Or are you going to just kind of let life happen and evolve as it happens?
So I think that I'll definitely let life happen as it happens. I don't think it's about staying relevant. I think it's more about inspiring other people. So a lot of what I've posted that made a difference was charity work or poetry or trying to start campaigns that people can get involved in.
Like what?
So we had a drive to collect funds for sanitary pads.
Wow.
So I was actually the head of media and communications for Amnesty International WITS.
Okay.
And what we did is we realized that a lot of girls at WITS don't actually have access to sanitary pads. You know, they can't even afford to put a loaf of bread on their table. So we started a campaign to actually get sanitary pads donated to these girls, and we put up boxes all around campus, and a whole bunch of people would donate. And up until today, this initiative has been running for the past 3 years.
Wow.
And yeah, we're still getting
You're not
donations.
going to let it die?
No, absolutely not. We're actually trying to find sponsors to actually sponsor these sanitary pads for these girls. And so recently I actually started up my own initiative where I was distributing reusable sanitary pads to girls in rural areas. And that gained a lot of support and a lot of momentum, and a lot of people actually supported my campaign and donated funds. So that was absolutely amazing.
Great. Let's go for an ad break. When we come back, we talk a little more about your social media following, and then we're going to move into that darker area, which is cyberbullying. Raisa is my guest. She's a second-year psychology student at WITS University. We're talking, she's a social media influencer, how it started, where she's at the moment, and the difference she's making in other young people's lives. Right after the ad break, we're going to talk cyberbullying. Raisa is my guest. She's a social media influencer. She has approximately 46,000 followers. And it's not about being in the limelight. It's not about looking pretty and saying banal things on her posts. It's about being an influencer. It's about making a difference. And as you've heard, she's been involved in the campaign of supplying sanitary pads to the needy. Raisa, you tell me also that you're working on 2 projects that's linked in directly with your sanitary towel project. Tell us about it.
So we were one of the groups that actually protested to get the VAT removed off sanitary pads because we didn't believe that it should be classified as a luxury item.
Wow.
It's something that every girl needs. It's not something that we choose. The second thing is that we wanted to find something that's sustainable and that's good for the environment. So we actually found a company that manufactures decomposable sanitary pads that we can actually donate to these girls in these rural areas, and we can use for ourselves as well, which makes a massive difference to the landmines that are currently piling up with sanitary pads.
Obviously, you're very dependent on funding and sponsors, etc. How do you go about getting that into motion?
So, like I said, with social media, you kind of put a post up.
Wow.
And it gains momentum because
Yes.
it's something that people really believe in. It's a cause that a lot of people support, and it's something that that every girl relates to,
Right.
and most guys as well, because they have mothers, they have sisters, they have wives.
Of course.
So it gains a lot of momentum. Once you post it, someone sees it and they're like, wow, this is amazing. And sometimes we get such amazing sponsors that kind of sponsor most of the funding that we actually need.
Who manages the sponsorships, etc.? Are you directly involved, or do you have other
So
people
I've
take
got
over?
other people as well that help me with that.
Obviously.
Yes.
So the future is looking good. You're currently involved with the sanitary towel campaign. It's firmly embedded, and it's going to be an ongoing project.
Most
Anything else you're
definitely.
thinking about to introduce?
So at the moment, I think that's the main goal. But obviously, looking further down the line, we do want to get the government to actually, supply free sanitary pads
okay.
to all the girls in the country, because we think that it is something that needs to happen.
Okay, good on you. We'll be following you for sure. Cyberbullying, you yourself were a victim. How did you deal with it? How did you know that you were being targeted? Did you know who the perpetrator was? And how did you rise above this horrific situation in your life?
So initially, I kind of saw the messages in my inbox, calling me some really nasty names, saying some really nasty things towards me, telling me that...
And you actually read them?
I did read them. They were quite hurtful. And, someone told me, why does failing as a wife make me an expert on giving advice? And, some really, really hurtful comments. And initially I sat back and it really did get to me. So I broke down. I said, no, why am I doing this? I should probably just get off social media completely. And it really did. It was very devastating to see that people could be so nasty. At that point, I didn't know who the person was. It was kind of anonymous. They were hiding behind fake profiles, constantly sending nasty messages, constantly targeting the way I looked, what I had said, and things like that.
And this was on the public platform?
This was on a
Everybody
public
else could
platform.
read it as well?
So they were either commenting on my pictures, which is where everyone could see it, or they were sending me private messages, but over and over and over again to ensure that I had gotten the message. So I actually took a social media break. So I stopped posting. I told everyone that I just needed some time away from social media, and I took about 3 months off from social media.
How did you feel knowing that you had such a large following, that you're taking time out simply because you were being bullied? Were you not sad about the other followers that would be kind of almost left in the lurch by your break?
So a lot of people were actually calling me, like, Carissa, what's going on? Why are you not on social media? Why aren't you posting? And at that point, I wasn't comfortable speaking about it. So I had just, kind of brushed it off and said, no, I was busy. And one day I was kind of sitting back and I said, okay, but if I'm going through this, how many other people are possibly going through the same thing? Because cyberbullying has... it's something that's such a vicious cycle, and so many people fall victim of it. And so that's when I actually decided to get back onto social media and explain to my followers why I had taken the break.
Wow.
And also sharing the messages that these people had sent to me.
You were bold enough to do that.
I did that, yes.
What was the response like?
So a lot of people were very supportive. A lot of people, motivated me and brought me out of that dark place. And that really, really helped. And how I would say, like, dealing with cyberbullying and what's the best way to deal with it is that if you are a victim of cyberbullying, obviously try and find out who the perpetrator is so that you can actually take legal action. That I only found out much later on is that you can take legal action against these bullies.
Did you find out? Did you investigate and find out who the person was?
So with me, there wasn't just one person, it was a few people.
All the same group of people, or totally unrelated
so they were
to each other?
completely unrelated to each other. But they were all trying to make a point. So a lot of them were like, they'd say these nasty things, but it was because they wanted me to actually post about them. And
also obviously there was something missing. They had their own self-esteem issues. They were not feeling good about themselves, and the only way they could deal with that uneasiness in themselves was to hit out at you. They were obviously jealous at the fact that you have this amazing profile with that many followers.
No, of course. But for me, it was like I didn't want to, put their names out there, because at the end of the day, that's still someone's reputation. It's still someone's life. And I didn't want to hurt them in the same way that they had hurt me. So I even messaged them. So I never ever responded with harsh words. I always responded with kindness to try and see where they were coming from and to see their perspective. A lot of the time it didn't work because they just wanted to be nasty. But, there was this one incident where there was this girl who was messaging me, and she's constantly saying these nasty things. It was something that I had posted during Ramadan. And she's constantly speaking about Islam and speaking about how violent the religion is and speaking about what she had seen on the news. And I continued responding to her with kind words. I continued saying, if you ever do want to learn more, then you can let me know. But I'm not going to respond with violence or respond with hate. And she eventually, sent me a message, and she's like, I don't understand how you can still respond to me kindly after I swore at you, after I degraded your religion and everything else. And now she's actually contemplating becoming a Muslim,
Mashallah.
Which is amazing. Yeah.
Did you ever resort to taking legal action against the other people that were bullying you?
Not at the moment, no. I didn't.
Have you called them out? Do they know that you know who they are?
They do know that I know who they are.
Have you confronted them?
I have confronted them. I have not taken legal action, though.
What did they say in their defense?
They couldn't say much because they didn't think that I would eventually know who they were. So some of them did apologize. Others were a bit too arrogant, and they were like, no, you know what? We said what we needed to say. It wasn't me. That was a fake profile. You can't prove anything. So I just let it go.
What did you learn from all of that? And what's the advice you'd give to other people who find themselves in a similar situation? I know you've resorted to going to social media to talk about it, so you empower other people. But someone that's not on social media and who is experiencing the cyberbullying or doesn't have a following as you do, how do they go about protecting themselves?
I think the first step is to actually tell someone that you're being bullied. So you can't stay silent about it, because obviously it's just going to carry on and on and on. And unlike normal face-to-face bullying, cyberbullying can follow you home. And it continues the entire night. It can continue over the weekends. It doesn't need to be face-to-face. It can always be anonymous people targeting you. And I think the first step is to obviously tell someone that you are being bullied, and then to obviously seek help and see how you can go forward from there. So some people choose to take legal action. Other people decide to either delete their account completely and, start fresh. And it just depends, but they do need to speak to someone initially.
So there are a whole host of options.
Yes.
And hopefully the bullying will stop. But the sad thing is that there are some young people who are bullied so badly that it actually pushes them over the edge. You are one of the fortunate ones.
Yeah, so obviously, bullying does lead to depression. It leads to, teens committing suicide. It can have such, a ripple effect on people. And I think that I was lucky because I had the support system. But obviously, it's never easy to actually get past that and to deal with all these hateful comments. And that's why I said to always seek out and find a friend, or to, even if you have to confide in a family member, but you need some form of support system. Otherwise, it does become very overwhelming.
Has it stopped now? Completely?
Unfortunately not.
No, it's still ongoing.
It's still ongoing.
Isn't it time that you took legal action just
I
to make a point and to stop the harassment?
So that will be taking place very soon.
Okay, we're going to wrap up now. Your words of encouragement and advice to people watching us this morning, both about being an influencer and being the victim of bullying, cyberbullying.
So I think my words would be that, everyone goes through a hard time. So even if you are being bullied, try to look at the other person's perspective and find the hurt within them, because obviously they're bullying you for a reason.
That's too kind.
They hurt themselves. It is kind, but it's the truth. And a lot of the bullies that I have actually encountered have so much of pain within them that they think by hurting the next person, they're going to get through that, and they're not. So for me, it's to look at every side and to look at every person and then to make a final decision.
That's really very noble of you, and I'm going to be following you to see what you're up to. Thank you indeed for coming in and sharing with us. All the very best. Hope to see you soon. Again, that is. And there you have it, Raisa talking to us about being a social media influencer. She has upwards of 46,000 followers, and she's made some really relevant comments on social media, and she has now a huge following. She was also the victim of cyberbullying, but as you've heard, a very noble young lady. She rose up against all odds, and it was such a pleasure talking to her. So there are ways and means. Do not retaliate. Respond with love, respect, and kindness. And on that note, then, we've come to the end of the show. I've learned a thing or two, and I need to start taking this advice as well. Respond with respect, kindness, and dignity, inshallah. Take care on the roads, that is. Till next week at the same time as always, it is Assalamu alaikum and a Khudafiz from me, Julie Alli.
قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا، حني قلبي على جمعة الخير.